Hello everyone. In today's video, I'm going to be canning honey ginger carrots from the book, the all-new Ball Book of Canning and Preserving. I'm Rebecca from StockingMyPantry.com. Now first I'm going to go over the recipe and the method as it's stated in this book, and then I'm going to do a slight variation and I'll explain the difference to you and why I'm making the slight variation. Okay, so first let's talk about the ingredients. It calls for 2 teaspoons of salt, a teaspoon of ground ginger, a half a cup of orange juice, 4 tablespoons of soy sauce, and 4 tablespoons of honey, and also 2 1/4 pounds of carrots that have been washed and peeled, cut into slices, dice, or leave whole. Not sure how you could leave them whole unless they were like baby carrots, but anyway. And this yields 2 quarts or 4 pints. And the basic method is to prepare your pressure canner in jars, which I have done. I have my jars heated in my Nesco. The water's hot, the jars are hot. I've stopped it, but I'm leaving the lid on so it stays hot. Okay, step 2, combine the prepared ingredients and dry seasonings in a large bowl. So this is where I kind of vary a little bit, is you're supposed to put all of the ingredients, so the salt, the ginger, and so on, into the bowl with the carrots and combine them. So then it says, fill 1 jar at a time, pack ingredients and remaining liquid seasonings. So what happens with this method is you put all of the ingredients in the bowl and then you pack everything into your jars. And at the end, there will still be some of the liquid ingredients in the bowl. And so then you kind of evenly distribute it among the jars. Okay? So, and then you go on from there with adding chicken broth or vegetable broth, hot chicken or vegetable broth, to the jars to bring it up to, let's see, how much headspace? 1 inch headspace. Okay, so I'm going to be doing it a little bit differently in that I'm going to put the spices into each jar individually, and also the carrots, and then adding the broth. And there's a couple of reasons why I'm doing that. The first reason is because I feel like I get the spices a little bit more evenly distributed. And then also, since I can fit 5 pints into my Nesco, instead of doing 4 pints, I'm doing 5 pints. So the way that I prepared for this is I sliced up the carrots and I kind of filled up my jars just to get the right amount of carrots. And then obviously dumped them into this bowl here. And then I figured out how much I need per jar for the different seasonings. So basically, it was just taking, as an example, 2 teaspoons of salt in 4 pints. That would be a half a teaspoon per pint. So I just put a half a teaspoon of salt and wrote it down. And I'm just going to go and fill up each jar. So what I think that I'm going to do is put the carrots in until the jars are half or 3/4 full, then put the spices in, fill it the rest of the way with carrots, and then add my liquid. So the only reason I'm doing that is I debated about just putting all of the seasonings and everything in the bottom of the bowl, or the jars, and putting in the carrots, or you can put in the carrots and then put the seasonings on top. But anyway, I just feel like I just want to do it the way that I'm going to do it. So I think they might kind of distribute a little bit better, not just all be down at the bottom of the bowl, or the bottom of the jar. Although I have to say that when you're doing the processing, it probably isn't going to matter. They're all going to be seasoned equally. But this is just the way that I am choosing to do it. So you can do it however you want. Okay, let's go ahead and dive in. Okay, so I'm going to start off just by removing my jars out of the canner. And I don't know if you can see, but they are hot. And so I'm going to be using my jar lifter to take them out. And by the way, one little tip that for the Nesco is you're supposed to, with pressure canning, put 8 cups of water in. What I do is I fill this Pyrex. Obviously it has chicken broth in it, but I fill it up to 8 cups. I put some of the water into each of my jars, the rest of it into the canner, and then I heat everything up. And the reason I do it this way is that as I take these jars out of the canner, I'll dump the water that's in them back into the canner, and I'll end up with the right amount of water in the canner. So if you don't do it that way, what ends up happening is you have to dump the water that's in the jars into the sink or a bowl or whatever. And so this is just easier. You don't have to do it that way, but that's just a little tip. Okay, I've got the jars out. I'm going to close the lid so the water stays hot. And now I'm just going to start by putting the carrots into the bowl. I'm going to put into the jars. I'm going to move my ingredients aside so you guys can see a little bit better. And my hands are clean, so I'm just going to use my hands. Sometimes our hands are the best utensil. So I'm just going to put the carrots at least halfway into the jars, and then I'll add all of my spices and then finish up from there. And again, this isn't rocket science. This is just one way to do it. There's multiple ways you can accomplish the same thing. As I said, you could put all the seasonings in the jars first. You could mix them together with the carrots in the bowl, whatever you want to do. Okay, I'm going to call that good. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and add the seasonings to the jars. And to keep myself from getting confused, I did write down the right amount to put in each jar because sometimes I get confused. Okay, so we're going to start off with salt. And I am using canning and pickling salt. You can use any non-iodized salt. That'll work just fine. Okay, so I will put a half a teaspoon in each jar. Okay, the next thing is 1/4 teaspoon of ground ginger. One thing I love about this particular recipe is that other than the carrots and the orange juice, pretty much all of the ingredients are ones that you're going to have on hand. I actually squeezed a large orange yesterday for the orange juice because I don't typically just drink orange juice. And it came up a little bit, just a little bit short of what I need. So I'll let you in on a little secret. I added a little bit of lime juice to it because I figured it's just for flavor, and that would be fine too if it was orange with just a little bit of lime mixed in. So sometimes you have to improvise a little bit, and so that's what I did. So speaking of the orange juice, the next thing is orange juice. I'm going to put 2 tablespoons of orange juice in each jar. And I am making a little bit of a mess. Whoops. Good thing I'm going to wipe the jars, huh? Or wipe the rims. Ay, ay, ay. And I'm just going to evenly distribute the extra. Okay. Okay, the next thing is 1 tablespoon of soy sauce in each pint. And it's kind of funny because other than the dry seasonings, everything's going down to the bottom anyway, so it probably doesn't matter a whole lot the order that you put things in. Okay, and 1 tablespoon of honey. Using quarts for this, you would use double of what I'm saying, or you could just follow their recipe and instructions. Okay, now you're going to fill the jars the rest of the way with carrots, keeping in mind you want a 1-inch headspace. Now, considering that I cut the carrots and put them in jars, and then to figure out exactly how many I needed, I should have the right amount, more or less anyway. You know, it's funny because I'm not really very much of a math person, but sometimes math can really help you out with canning, because, as an example, wanting to do 5 pints instead of 4, it was easy to just, you know, look at how much of every ingredient I needed for 4, figure out how much that is per pint, and then I could easily adapt this. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and fill the jars with hot chicken broth. And again, you can use vegetable broth if you prefer. I probably have more broth than I need. Actually, I'm quite sure that I do, but it's always better to have more rather than not enough. And actually, one little tip is, one thing I did consider doing is just putting some chicken bouillon granules in each jar and then just adding hot water. And so you can do that as well. Okay, now it's time to debubble. And we'll check the headspace. I need 1 inch. And that's pretty much it. Okay. All right. Somehow managed to get it right on this time. Okay, so now we're going to wipe the rims, and I have to say I think I made a bigger mess with this than I normally do. I know for sure I got some honey around the edges and on the rims, and so I am using vinegar. You can use water for a lot of recipes. It depends. So for example, let's say that you're doing pickles with a simple brine, and you could just use water. Anything that's greasy, or like in this case, honey is sticky, I like using vinegar. And you of course don't want it to be dripping wet, because you don't want to drip any vinegar in. we'll put the lids on, and then the rings fingertip tight as always. I'm just double checking to make sure there's no honey on these rims. Okay, so lids on, fingertip tight. Okay. And since I was so messy, I'm just going to touch my jars and make sure I don't have anything sticky on them. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and put them into the canner. I have one regular mouth ring in here so that one of the jars will be lifted up a little bit above the others. That just makes it easier to take it out. Okay, we'll close the lid, turn it into the closed position. Make sure that you're starting in the exhaust position. Even though this is pressure canning, we're going to start in the exhaust position. Now let's go ahead and get the canner going. Oh, before I start the canner, I just wanted to mention that the time for quarts is 30 minutes. The time for pints is 25 minutes. Now, you don't adjust for altitude with the time in pressure canning. Just make sure to use the right pressure valve. If you're using the Nesco or Carey canner, you use the green valve if you're 1,000 feet or higher, the black valve if you're below 1,000 feet. Okay, let's go ahead and get it going. Okay, so we're going to press high, and I'm doing 25 minutes. And pressing start. And you're going to, you see the digital chase happening. This will take a while. Once it gets up to the right temperature and pressure, you'll see an E10, it'll count down to E1, and at that point you switch the valve to airtight. If you need more instructions on how to pressure can in the Nesco, be sure to check out my video on that topic. I'll bring you back to see the finished product at the end. So all of the carrots are out of the canner. It looks like all of them have sealed. There was no siphoning, so I'm really pleased with that. It's too early for me to actually check the seals, but it looks like they've sealed, and so things look great. It's funny too because they smell really good, I think because of the ginger especially and the soy sauce. And so while it was processing, I was like, oh no, I hope that it didn't, siphon or anything. But the water was clear. There's nothing on the jars, so it looks great. So anyway, I'm looking forward to trying these as well as some of the other recipes in that book because there's just a lot of great recipes. So anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, I would really appreciate it if you would like the video. And if you haven't already done so, if you would subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day.